What's up, Call of Duty fans? Good to see you back. Sorry it's been so long since I've made my last video. It's been a very long week for me. I've been sick, I've been kind of bedridden, haven't had a chance to really do much but kind of sit around and just watch the games and kind of input data here and there on my laptop. I've barely been up and about. So I apologize for being a little MIA this week, but I just didn't have really the energy to put forward a video that I could really feel super good about. So I didn't want to put out anything just kind of mediocre or just putting out content for content's sake. So this is going to be just a general week 3 recap. I'm not going to get a chance to go into each of the games independently, but I will kind of break down the teams a little bit more specifically and maybe throw a couple of clips in there as far as some of the matchups that were worth watching and kind of were of note as we kind of break down the things. I will also still be trying to get out one of those Eyes On series videos. I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to do it. It really comes down to how long they're going to be. So keep your eye out for that. I'm hoping to get the one out for midnight here this weekend. But I've got a couple other responsibilities I need to take care of, so I can't make any promises. I know my channel's been a little bit off kilter lately, but I want to start getting the content out a little bit more regularly as soon as I start feeling a little bit better. So we'll try to do everyday recaps for next week, as well as the Eyes On stuff. We're also going to be doing a week 4 setup, as well as the power rankings. That will for sure happen. It'll probably come out Sunday or Monday morning, one of the two. So let's dig in. 3 was all Division B, and we had a lot of expectations for some teams, and there was a couple of question marks surrounding a few others. Now, in my opinion, week 3, first week of Division B, I had Division B, just generally speaking, being a more competitive environment than Division A. I thought Division A had a little bit more of a boundary between the top teams and the bottom teams. Some of that was true. Maybe some of it wasn't. It's kind of hard to tell because Dashy wasn't around for Optic, but of course we saw Gen G and Midnight and Optic all do rather well. And then we have teams like Luminosity and Evil Geniuses and Reciprocity not doing well. I had this division being a lot closer in the disparity between the top and the bottom, and I think we got a lot of iterations of that. So let's dig in. Of course, you see there what the schedule looked like. Let's dig into Monday first. Now, the Heretics would get her first go against eUnited, and this was kind of, for me, a very scary matchup because I think Heretics has the potential to be one of the better teams in the Pro League this year, but starting off against what I anticipated to be the best team going into this division, and in a lot of people's mind, the best team in the division, had a lot of question marks. Now, it was a little bit fortunate because eUnited did not play super great, but Heretics played really well. Throughout the entirety of the series, Heretics looked really clean. They looked polished. They looked ready to go. They had a couple of nice setups as far as opening rounds, not only on the hard points, but also on the control. The whole match was rather back and forth, though. First hard point went Heretics' way. First Search and Destroy went eUnited's way. Control was right down the middle, and then flip-flop. The hard point and the second hard point went to eUnited, and then the final S&D would go Heretics' way. It was a very good match. Definitely one worth going back and rewatching. If you didn't get a chance to check that one out, you definitely should. And then with all of the flight problems with 100 Thieves and Splyce, it would actually be Denial versus Enigma 6 playing in the second set for Monday. And I wasn't 100% sure what to expect for Denial. I thought that this team looked pretty good when it came to the PLQ, their ability to run double ICRs as well as triple SOGs. They had a lot of flexibility in the roster. The biggest question mark came down to, would they actually clean up their specialist usage? This is one of those teams that likes to kind of go all in kind of randomly and catch people by surprise using 3 or 4 specialists at a time, and some of them finding very little value. That's not traditionally what we see from the other teams, and it was definitely an element to keep your eye on. In this instance, though, Enigma 6 would start off strong, just playing at a whole nother pace than Denial was ready for. Kismet popped off on the first hard point on frequency. He was all over the place, but then it would start to come back a little bit closer. The Search and Destroy was relatively close. The 6-4 there, the Control, Denial really only won that because, again, they're all in strategy. They won the second or third round, I forget which, by using just about 3 or 4 specialists when it was 7-9 in against their favor, and they ended up pulling it back and were ended up able to take that 3-2. And the last hard point also very close. It had my hopes up for Denial because my expectations for Enigma 6 was that this team would be very good, and Denial, having put up a fight against them, I was feeling pretty good about it. But then they would start off Tuesday playing up against Heretics, and again, kind of, you know, in my wheelhouse, Denial comes out and they win the first hard point convincingly, 250 to 115. I was very excited to see Denial potentially showing up and showing off against Heretics, but that wouldn't happen today. The Spanish, too good for the French. They would win the Search and Destroy, the Control, and then the last hard point in a full sweep fashion, 3 in a row for Heretics. They would go up to a 2-0 record, only dropping, again, 3 maps now, which is not bad at all considering they, again, had that 5-game set versus eUnited. And then a very interesting one, Envy and Excelerate. And my expectations for Excelerate were not super high, simply due to the fact that I just didn't expect the team to come out and feel the same level of comfort level that you would expect from a team like Envy, who've been on the main stage, who've won championships. Excelerate, of course, they have a little bit of experience behind them, but they're mostly a bunch of pro-ams that have been put together and they found some success. They came out looking really solid as they beat Envy 250 to 118. Envy looked completely asleep, but able to bounce right back. The search and destroy looked good for Envy. The control, and this is the big thing as we look forward, when you look at controls in general, I'm excited to see just how controls go, because it seems to be whoever wins the control ends up winning the set for the most part, with a couple of exceptions. So the control would be won by Excelerate. Hardpoint again for Envy. That was actually a very convincing one, as again, Excelerate came out on fire against them. Envy responded back with a hard point of their own, and then the last search and destroy was close, but it would favor that of Excelerate. They would win this one, a 3-2. Very close set, and Excelerate putting a lot of people on notice with that win. Enigma 6 eUnited. Well, this one wasn't as close as I was hoping it would be. I had Enigma 6 doing a lot of work versus eUnited, but eUnited came out frying. Everyone looked good. Arcides and Clayster were popping off. Goodness gracious. The double AR line that they pull out, of course, Clayster more of a flex role, but when he's able to pull out a double ICR setup at times, this eUnited team looks absolutely nutty. They're able to take the search and destroy very convincingly, a 6-1. It was pretty much a blowout all the way through. Enigma 6 just didn't look like they were ready to play. I don't know if they didn't do the work going in beforehand or if they just misread eUnited from the day before, but they were not ready to play eUnited. They would lose this one pretty badly. And then our first look at 100 Thieves, and a lot of you guys know what my thoughts on 100 Thieves are. They look good in certain elements. I think that Slasher and Octane was the two reasons that they were able to even make it through the Pro League qualifier, but you added Priesthood to the mix, and he helps out the SOG gameplay. The biggest question mark comes down to what can Enable and can he actually do on this roster. The answer for this time through would be not very much. It would be a pretty close hard point, but I think there was more Splyce warming up than it was 100 Thieves playing super well. Priesthood did look good, though, to be completely honest. And then the search and destroy, very back and forth, but Splyce would hold the edge. And then the control, 100 Thieves, again, had touted themselves as being one of the better control teams in the game. They did not look so against Splyce. They were absolutely torn apart by the set pieces that Splyce have put together. Splyce, in my book, after watching them play, I was impressed. They had a lot of really great opening setups for control, as well as the hard point as far as their rotations went. I'm very impressed by the Splyce team. It was definitely a team that I noticed and said this very well could be the best team out there right now. We would come to see if that was actually true later. Look at Wednesday. 100 Thieves would be able to bounce right back as they would play Denial, and I actually had Denial potentially winning this game. I would look a little silly as Denial did not look ready to play 100 Thieves whatsoever. To be fair, Priesta is absolutely a monster, and he absolutely tore through Denial up front. The SOG gameplay was just not there for Denial whatsoever throughout the entirety of the day. Slasher and Octane also had good games, as well as Enable. He actually looked pretty well near the end of that too. So that's good looks for 100 Thieves. That's a team that you need to beat. If you don't beat Denial, there's a lot of question marks raining about if this roster can actually hold together and actually do anything in Division B. But able to beat Denial. Not the best showing from Denial. I thought they looked a little bit lost. They actually would come back Thursday and switch some things up. We'll talk about that later. Heretics and Enigma 6. Now, again, with Enigma 6 getting blown out by eUnited and Heretics having, beat eUnited in the previous day on Monday, you were thinking that this one would favor Heretics, and it would, but it was close, to be completely honest. The biggest thing is Enigma 6, they just are looking absolutely lost on the search and destroy right now. After their first day where they were able to beat Denial 6-4 and a very sloppy search and destroy, I didn't mention it then, but it was, they got blown out by eUnited. They would get blown out here by Heretics on both search and destroys, but they would look solid on the hard point and the first control. I was actually excited to see Enigma 6 coming up with a little bit more aggressive gameplay, but it was cohesive. It wasn't just aggressive for aggression's sake. They were actually supporting each other really nicely. It caught Heretics a little bit off guard with the control, especially that 3-0 in the control was absolutely monumental for them, but they wouldn't be able to close things out. The reverse hard point would go that way of Heretics, and then the search and destroy, again, Enigma 6 just look a little bit lost on search. Kind of have shades of like UYU almost from Division A, where they just did not look the part when it came down to playing search. eUnited versus Excelerate. And after Excelerate had put everyone on notice beating Envy, this was by no means a guarantee that Excelerate wouldn't be able to take this, and they would actually find themselves up 2-1 after they don't do so well on the hard point. Again, the hard point's been the biggest weakness, I would say, for Excelerate so far. Actually, one of the lowest rating teams by average. Talk about that more a little bit later. But they would lose the first hard point 250 to 111, not very good. And then they would come back and do very well on the search and the control, a 6-2, 3-1. But the unfortunate thing is they would lose out on the second hard point, and the last search and destroy, they wouldn't quite be able to close it out almost a chance to overthrow eUnited that would have put them at 2-0, but instead they would fall here. It'll just be the 1-1 after the 5-game set. And then Splyce and Envy. This is one that I had my eye on before the games started on Monday, and it would prove to be a very entertaining one. This is another one that you kind of put a mental note in. If you want to go back and watch any games, you should go back and watch this one. Splyce would go down early as Envy came out looking ready to go. 250 to 217 and the 6-5. Very close search and destroy. And then the control, again, whoever seems to win the control almost seems to almost always win out the set. As that would go Splyce's way. It was a 3-2. Envy had a chance to put it away. They were up 2-0 in that game, and Splyce would battle back to find 3 straight rounds, and then they would be able to outlast Envy in the second hard point, and then again in the second search and destroy via reverse sweep. And again, Splyce came out the gate with these set pieces that just looked so good. This is definitely one of the teams to keep an eye on if you're looking to break things down more analytically, because this team is really, really strong, I think, generally. Not only are they fragging well, but they're setting up some awesome set pieces for control and search. It just looks really, really good. I'll be definitely doing an eyes on with Splyce. Maybe even I'll do that first. Maybe I'll skip the midnight stuff. I don't know. But Splyce is definitely a team to keep an eye on because they're coming out with the preparation and they're looking really solid. It was a little bit of a scary start, but again, it was a very close set. All 5 games. Definitely worth the watch to go back through. Heretics and Excelerate would start off our Thursday, and we weren't sure. Again, Excelerate looked pretty solid coming up against, again, beating Team Envy, narrowly losing to eUnited. They wouldn't find nearly the same success here against Heretics, who definitely bounced back after their Enigma 6 victory. It sounds weird to say that, but they were able to close this one out 3-0. It was a pretty close set, but again, Excelerate on search, kind of almost the same storyline as Enigma 6. You would like to see them kind of bone up a little bit more on their search gameplay because that's definitely one of the areas that they need to start winning more of. It was a 6-3 there versus the Heretics, but the 3-2 in control, it was a close game. It should have gone to 4, I think, generally speaking. I would have liked to have seen this gone to 4 just to see Excelerate on hardpoint again, but it would not be in the cards for today. Heretics would win this one, like I said, 3-0. Team Envy and Denial. And again, I want to have so much faith in this Denial team. I really do. Because they came out on Thursday. Whalers and Zeke actually switched their specialists, which nobody mentioned. But Whalers had been using the Seraph. That got switched around. He would be using the Tempest off of Prophet, and Zeke would actually switch with him. And, of course, the conversation will come into play now that the Annihilator is also GA'd. Yes, I said that. We'll talk about that at the end of the video. Will this hurt or help Denial? Because they haven't had the impact that other teams have had with that specialist in specific. So this would be an interesting set. Denial would come out and nearly take the first hard point. It was a very close one, 250 to 246. The search and destroy, Denial looked like they cleaned things up. They came out and beat Envy 6-5 there. And then the control also very back and forth. But the hard point, again, just not quite there for them. They would get absolutely smoked by Envy on the second hard point, 250 to 58. Things looking good for Envy there, but a very narrow set. Don't sleep on this Denial team. They're going to get a win next week. They had a very tough week. They're definitely going to be able to pull a win next week. You're going to hear it from me first. Enigma 6 and then Splyce. And goodness, what do you expect from Enigma 6? This is a team that I think is being slept on as they were way overselling the Splyce, saying that, oh, Splyce should be able to 3-0 these guys, no problem. I think people are still sleeping on Enigma 6. This is a good team. This is a very good team. They need to clean up a couple of things, but once they get their search back in motion, I think this team can definitely take games off of the top teams in this division, as well as potentially teams in Division A. This one would be a close set all the way through. It would go 4 games. It would eventually favor that of Splyce, but this was definitely one to go back and rewatch because it was a very close set. So even though Enigma 6 will fall to 1-3, we'll talk about why they're actually a better team than the 1-3 might suggest. And to finish off things, 100 Thieves and eUnited. Based on what you've seen so far, you would think eUnited would be able to run away with this one 3-0, no problem. That would not be the case, although eUnited would start off strong. A 2-0 start for them, 250 to 242 and a 6-5. 100 Thieves came to play. Again, Priesta and Octane looked absolutely insane throughout the entirety of it. I just have to say it. Kenny's just not at the level that his team needs him to be. Kenny and Enable need to go. I think you have 3 solid pieces. You pick up somebody like Decimate or Lacefield instead of Kenny and Enable, and I think you're in a pretty solid spot for 100 Thieves. But that's not the case right now. 100 Thieves would bounce back. They would take a very dominating control 3-0 against eUnited, and a lot of frustration on eUnited's face after that one as well. And then the hard point would be another close one, 250 to 225. eUnited would eventually survive, though, in the last search and destroy. No reverse sweep here. It would be a 6-4, so eUnited will improve 2, 3, and 1. In 100 Thieves down to 1 and 2. Let's take a look back over to those standings as we see them. And again, and as we go back through this, you have to be feeling pretty confident in Heretics. Again, they're not through the thick of their schedule yet. They still have to play Splyce, but everybody else should be essentially a win. They play 100 Thieves, and they have to play Envy as well. So they've got a couple of good games coming up next week. I'm excited to see if Heretics can maintain their flawless run through Division B. That would be insane to see, but you kind of look a little bit further down the lists. And I don't want to say it too strongly, but I think if you're a betting person, keep your eye on Enigma 6, because I think they're going to get some favorable lines. They've played definitely the hardest part of their schedule, having to go up against the 3 best teams in the division in eUnited, Heretics, and Splyce. Remind you that Heretics game was a full 5-game set, and the Splyce one was close all the way through. The eUnited set, yeah, it's a 3-0, and yeah, it was a pretty convincing loss, but the fact of the matter is that was the only real weak spot that I saw from Enigma 6 throughout the entirety of the week. They clean up a couple little things. You've heard from General himself. They don't get down on themselves too much. They come back, they bounce back, they do the legwork, and they come back stronger than the day before. And I think that's going to be the case. They've got a pretty favorable schedule coming up. They've got 100 Thieves, should be a win. They've got Envy, definitely could be a win. And they've got Excelerate, definitely should be a win. So they've got 3 games that they could potentially go a full 4 and 3 at the end of the week. So definitely keep an eye out for Enigma 6. And if you're a betting guy, definitely keep an eye on those lines. That's a team that I'm looking on capitalizing on as we go through. So a little bit of a tidbit there. I will be doing power rankings, and I'm not going to be doing a recap of the previous week. I'm just going to be doing power rankings on that week specifically. I'm going to be talking about all the teams and a little bit more of a breakdown as far as where they stand in their averages, because I didn't get a chance to do that this week like I wanted to. I don't want to go too much longer with this one. I will set up a more lengthy power rankings video though coming out later this weekend, kind of breaking down each of the Division B teams and kind of how they fit into what we saw after the first week of Division A teams, and how we can expect them to fare from here on out. Again, I apologize for not being with you guys this last week, but I had to take care of myself, and I'm sorry to say it, but that had to come first. So, well, like I said, you'll catch me back in action after every day's recap for next week, pending any other illnesses. I don't see that happening. And of course, you can catch me on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays on the CCL, the Collegiate Call of Duty League, as that happens every single Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, casting the action there. And I'll also be doing the ETG live event going on the show match that'll happen on Saturday. I'm not sure how much more action I'll be getting with them, but hopefully you'll be able to catch me around the casting game a little bit more. Again, it's been a pleasure having you guys with me. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you subscribe, hit the bell to get notifications when videos do pop up. Feel free to also follow me on Twitter if you'd like, where you got to keep updates on my personal health. I'm just playing. Thanks so much again for your support. I do appreciate and love you all very much. Until next time, hope you keep holding it down. Later, bye-bye.